let's look at an example here where we are buying a futures contract. And first, when we are looking at a futures contract, there are a few things we'll want to note, a few assumptions or variables we'll want to pay attention to. One is the maturity. That's when this futures contract expires. So, if you start out today and you buy this futures contract, the futures contract is going to last all the way until maturity. So that's one item that we're going to look at. And the others, typically we're going to look at the settle price. So the settle price is going to be the closing price on that day, whereas these are kind of intraday highs and lows and what the price opened at. So we've got a different futures contract, and hence a different futures price for each maturity. And the other thing that we're interested in right now is something called the notional. And that's the number of currencies per one contract. So this, for example, is a British pound futures contract traded on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, CME. And one contract is worth 62,500 pounds. So my question, I think, that I'd like to answer is that if I buy 5 pound futures contracts, so 5 contracts on the British pound, and the spot rate later ends up at $1.3992 to the pound, what's the total value of my futures position? So just kind of identifying the parameters here, what the things we need to look for in this question would be that I'm buying a futures contract instead of selling. And so that's going to affect what formula we're going to use. I'm buying 5 of them, and it looks like this is the spot rate with which I'm going to calculate the profit or loss to this position. And when it comes to buying a futures contract, the profit or loss we're going to receive from it is basically the difference between what the spot price ends up at and the price that we originally paid for the futures price, and then multiplied by the number of contracts we bought and that notional that we were just looking at. And vice versa, the only thing that's different from buying versus selling, since what the futures buyer gains is what the futures seller loses and vice versa, the only difference between buying and selling, profit or loss, is that you take that same number and then you multiply by -1. What the buyer gains, the seller loses, and vice versa. So if this is the question that I need to answer, then the formula that I'm going to want to select from one of these two is the one that's on the top here, the profit from buying a futures position, since that's kind of what we're looking at. And then henceforth, I can get rid of this profit from selling formula. And here we just plug and chug, as they say. It looks like the spot price here was $1.392 to the British pound. The futures price, well, it looks like we didn't specify that. We either have the June or the March contract, so that's going to affect what settle price we're looking at. So let's go ahead and pick the June contract. And with the June contract, that settle price, the price that we're going to assume that we bought at that day is or was 1.4162. These are both in dollar terms. So these are dollars per pounds. And so we don't have to do any switching around or anything like that. We can just kind of directly drop them in. And then what else do we have? We've got 5 June pound futures that we were purchasing. So times 5. And then the notional, how much is each contract worth? And we saw up above to the top right here that one contract was worth 62,500 pounds. So we just put that in and then multiply all these items that we have together, and that's going to be our profit or loss from buying. And this is subtracted. And in this case, just looking at it here, you can tell this isn't going to turn out well for us because this minus a larger number, this is going to be negative. And so what we're going to end up with here is we know it's going to be negative or a loss. That actual loss is $5,312.50. And so one thing that's nice about the futures contract and pricing it is that, as we saw, the buyer's gain is the seller's loss, and the buyer's loss is the seller's gain. So if we want to calculate for the seller of this futures position their profit or loss, super easy. We just take all this and multiply it by -1, and then that's going to be the profit or loss from the seller of the futures contract. And so then that just means the seller made $5,312.50. But that's pretty much it for calculating futures profit or loss. So if you have another question where, maybe you wanted to calculate the profit or loss from buying March futures contracts and 3 of them, then you just need to substitute out a few things in this formula. That is which settle price that you're looking at now. So we're no longer looking at June, we're looking at March, and how many futures contracts we are buying. And so those swap out. So instead of 5, it's going to be 3. And instead of the futures price being the one from June, it's going to be the one from March, that 1.4228. And then the rest carries through. So the profit or loss from buying 3 March futures contracts amounts to $6,562.50.